Okay, here we go. Good afternoon and half a day. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing is now called to order. Today is Tuesday, July 20th, 2021, and the time now is 2:01. Notice for this public hearing were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets. First public notice was issued on July 12th, followed by July 16th. The committee will hear and accept testimonies on Bill 137-36 COR, introduced by Senator Jose Pedo Terlaje, co-sponsored by Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muña Barnes, Senator Clynton Ridgell, and Senator Mary Torres. An act to appropriate funds to the Government of Guam Retirement Fund to conduct a study relative to enhanced benefits for uniformed personnel in the defined benefits 1.75 retirement system. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this afternoon. We have the author of the bill, Senator Pedo Terlaje. To my immediate right, I have my Vice Chair, Senator Amanda Shelton, and Senator Terlaje. The general rules for this public hearing: those testifying on behalf of Bill 137-36 COR invited to the panel. And they are seated, and as soon as I get the sign in, I'll know exactly their names, but I know there's a Flores, there's a Agustin, and there's a Torres. So I think I know each one of you. I'll have you introduce yourself as we move along. Before you speak, make sure you introduce yourself, and then we won't ask you for your name anymore. Just one time. Right? Written testimony shall be submitted to the committee. Please provide my legislative staff with your written testimony for photocopying. Testimony may be read, and lengthy testimony should be summarized to about 5 minutes. If you need a little bit more time, feel free to just keep talking, and if it's too long, then I'll tell you, na para. Okay, so we can move along. Those testifying will be allowed to present oral testimony. Once you're done, please remain in the room for questions and for additional testimony as may be desired by the committee. Oral testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. We're here to talk about Bill 137-36, and that'll be the only thing we're going to be discussing today, okay? Personal inference as to the character or the motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of the general rule of conduct will result in removal from the public hearing room. Proper form and decorum shall be practiced by all present in the public hearing room for these proceedings. Individuals who fail to maintain proper form and decorum will be restricted from providing any oral testimony and will be removed from the room. When you speak, please make sure that the microphone is on and you speak into the microphone. Please state your name and your title for the record. We'll now begin with first the opening statement of Senator Pedo Terlaje on Bill 137-36. Senator Pedo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Before I share my thoughts, I also want to thank my colleague for their participation in today's presentation relative to Bill 137-36 COR. I also want to thank the panel for attending this public hearing. Bill number 137-36 COR is an act to appropriate $75,000 for the Government of Guam Retirement Fund to do an actuary study to determine how we can provide a better retirement system for our hardworking safety officers. I have done several research regarding retirement system in different areas. The result is very alarming and indicative to the fact that 95% of all the states in the United States do have some form of separate retirement plan for firemen, officers, and other first responders. My research, Mr. Chair, also concludes that employees working in such hazardous environment do have less lifespan from 6 to 11 years compared to the regular public sector counterparts. These scientific findings conclusively acknowledge the different lifestyle of a public safety officer who assume duties involving accident, fires, getting killed in the line of duty, and other life-threatening situations that give such a hazard environment on a daily basis. The government of Guam over the past 25 years or more have seen a steady and rapid decline of public safety officers, most specifically from the inequity of salary compensation or comparison. I also want to acknowledge that, Mr. Chairman, on the committee, since I am the Committee on Public Safety and we're all pursuing the study to resolve the disparity in law enforcement salaries inequities, and we will be approaching that at a later date. In closing, I also want to ask my colleague to support this legislation in support of our hardworking first responder. Mr. Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity given to me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to also recognize a colleague that have joined us, Senator Juan Brown. We'll begin hearing testimony, and it will be from my right, which is your left. We'll start with you, sir, Mr. Chiquina. Then we'll go down to Mr. Flores, Mr. Torres, and then Mr. Contra. And then we'll just proceed down. Then after that, don't leave, because if there's any questions that be posed by my colleagues, they'll ask you, and then we'll move from there. Okay? Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, you good senators. I'm Captain Ron Chiguina from the Barrigada Fire Station. I am here in support of Bill 137-36 that good Senator Pedo Terlaje has presented with co-authors Senator Tina Muña Barnes, Senator Clynton Ridgell, and Senator Mary Camacho Torres. And I'm sure down the line, all the other senators will come to the table again to deliberate this particular bill. For the senators present, thank you for being here and hearing us testify on behalf of this support of this bill. Now, I've been in the fire service for a good 20 plus years. I'm not gonna go into what we do in the fire service or what our brothers in the blue do. What I wanted to say is first, thank you for acknowledging the fact that there is a disparity with regard to the retirement systems that we have currently in the government of Guam and throughout the United States. Day in, day out, you know what we do. You see it on TV. You watch Chicago Fire, you watch Chicago PD, and you know what we do. The 20th anniversary of the 9/11 event is coming up next month, or a couple months from now. And you know, a lot of those firefighters and law officers, they were succumbed. They didn't meet they weren't able to enjoy their retirement, as we all know. All right. And so you understand the gravity of this particular bill retaining your first responders, your law officers here in Guam. Our sons and daughters from Guam are going elsewhere to find better opportunities. Workforce or government that provides better benefits. Our own local retired firefighter, his son just got hired, graduated from the Houston Fire Department. That's an accomplishment. It's a line that goes within their family. But we're seeing that. We're seeing that over and over again. And it's going to behoove this legislature and the next to find a resolution to this disparity that we currently are undergoing. So to keep it quick and nimble, again, I thank you for the support, or rather the acknowledgement of this disparity, and hopefully we can find a resolution down the road. Hopefully it's soon. But thank you for the opportunity to be here in support again of this bill. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Flores.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Edward L. Flores. I am a battalion chief in the Guam Fire Department. Again, like my colleague, I do support a bill, anything that is moving forward with a public safety-based retirement plan. I do have a few questions. I notice it mentions the 175 plan, and I know that new employees right now, we're not afforded that plan. The newer employees are under the Guam Supplemental Retirement Plan, which is also includes fire, police, and all the other Guam agencies. Does this bill also include that group of people, the newer firefighters, newer police officers, public safety officers within the government? Because again, the 175 plan is a limited group of people within the first responder community. and I think that's something that needs to be expanded to include all those new employees as well. I'm not sure if that's the case. Also, like my colleague Captain Chiguina mentioned, our force includes many other many other public safety agencies. I would like to see to ensure that all of those individuals are captured within this plan or this study. And also, you know, to reiterate, our force is quite old. The Guam Fire Department's age bracket is quite high. The ability for our department to get newer members, and the fact that many of our members are older members, the shortfalls in the amount of times and opportunities that individuals get for promotion leaves a lot of our older firefighters still within the firefighter 1, firefighter 2 bracket. And those are heavy lifters in the department. Takes a lot of physical capability for those individuals, and now with the current plan at 62, you're going to have some firefighter 1s, firefighter 2s, I'm sure police officer 1s that are going to be in that bracket, not the prime of their physical ability. So I do appreciate the move to take a look at this and see where the disparities are and possibly correct them. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, sir. LT, Lieutenant Torres?
Can you hear me, sir? 36 Guam Legislature. My name is Lieutenant Mark Torres. I'm with the Guam Police Department. I currently oversee the administration division of the department as the acting division chief. I am a 31-year veteran with the police force. I represent myself. I am here on my behalf, on my personal behalf, my personal experiences and my personal opinion. My opinions do not express those as chosen or elected by the Guam Police Department. I will say that I am, first of all, thank you, senators, for this bill and this proposal to increase or to find better ways to keep our personnel within the department through all law enforcement agencies throughout the government of Guam. We are losing police officers at a record high, like never before, because of a bunch of things. And one of those things is the retirement plan is not as attractive as it used to be. That was one of the reasons why I joined the department back in 1990. I was drawn to the promising outlook and future post career. But now things have changed, and I understand why the changes were made. However, when it comes to law enforcement officers, the duress, the strain, the toll it takes on an officer's emotional capacity and physical capacity are great. And this, I hope, takes into consideration all that police officers, firefighters, and all other law enforcement agency officials have to undergo. It's unlike any other career in the government of Guam or any other career anywhere else in the world. Law enforcement is dangerous. While we are called to protect those who are in need of our help, to help those who are in need of our help, to console those who are in need of our help, oftentimes we find it very difficult to find those resources for ourselves. And one can take solace and comfort in knowing that retirement is not too far. If we continue at this pace, I'm afraid that we're going to lose more officers. It's already showing. We're losing officers from the Guam Police Department within days of graduation. We've had cases where officers or police officer trainees would resign just 2 to 3 days from graduation. They're already on OJT. Once you're on OJT, it's almost a guarantee you will make it to graduation. But the lure of just the diploma or the certificate of completion for criminal justice in the field of criminal justice is not enough. There are so many factors that deal with an officer's decision to stay. And I think by creating an attractive retirement program, one that is much shorter and takes into consideration all that a law enforcement officer has to endure throughout his career would make it that much easier for someone to stay in the department, let alone sign up to be a law enforcement officer or official. So with that said, I implore you, senators, I thank you first for taking the time to present this bill and to make the effort, because in all my years of service, I've seen many bills, and to no offense to anyone, but I've seen a lot of bills that are unfunded mandates. And with this, at least we have some funding source to provide the research and the study required to make an intelligent decision for us, for your law enforcement community. You have many officers who are vested and will continue to stay vested, but they're getting tired. Having to work in this profession until the age of 62, especially if you start at 19, that's many, many years of, because for at least the Guam Police Department, you have to be at least 19 years of age to qualify. That's one of the pre-qualifications to become a police officer, is to be at least of 19 years of age. So from 19 years of age to 62 to reach your retirement maturity, that's a lot of time. I've done the math before, but I've not kept that number in my mind, but I know it's a long, long time. And as you can see, with the climate of policing today, law enforcement in general, it's changed. It's all around us. We see it, and there's no denying it. Statistics, we have the statistics to prove it or to back it up if need be. But to the common person, he or she can see that it's changed. We don't have a bunch of people lining up at DOA to apply for the police officer position, not like we used to. We're losing many of our folks to other agencies within the local law enforcement community and even the federal law enforcement community, because a trained GPD officer is a well-trained officer. That person, if that person does complete the Criminal Justice Academy with the Guam Police Department, he or she walks away with loads of educational experience and also on-the-job training experience, because they will get at least 8 weeks of on-the-job training. And all that training combined with the experience that they get will make them a very viable candidate. Add that to the couple years that he or she decides to invest in after graduation, that his or her resume will be even more attractive. And so they're very easy, they're easy pickings when it comes to hiring, because the work is done. We've trained them up, and they've gotten the experience that they need. They're able to make better, more mature decisions when it comes to law enforcement, and they become that much better a candidate. So we lose folks to that because of the other attractive incentives from other agencies, and that includes retirement plans. So with that said, senators, I can go on and on and on, but I wish not to, because I know your time is precious, and I know we're here simply to show support for this bill, which I think is a great measure and certainly a step in the right direction. And I look forward to seeing more as a result of the study and further support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Officer Contra, Primo?
Good day, Senators. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, thank you. Half a day. My name is Reno Cruz Alcantara. I'm glad that you're allowing us here to testify on this bill and that we're supporting it. Bill 137-36. I've been in the Guam Police Department for 24 years now. Before I actually came in, I was supposed to leave back to the States, and DOA called me and said, we're doing a testing. Do you want to try for the police department? And I did, and I passed. And they told me that the physical will be in the next week, and I did that and I passed. And they told me the training was going to start. So when I started my training, the cadre there told me that if you're in the police department for the pay, you're in the wrong place. 24 years later, I'm over at the crime lab. I've done a lot of training. I've got a lot of certificates. And right now, like Lieutenant Torres said, a lot of the people now that are coming in aren't coming in to stay. They're coming in to get their training and go elsewhere, where the pay is more better, the retirement looks better. So the bill that you guys are proposing is really great for us if it goes through. We're here to support you and hope that this bill passes so that you can look at it. We're not asking for too much. We're asking for you to take a look at it and see what you can do for us. I'm getting close to retirement, not too far from it. But you know, if you didn't like the job here, then you shouldn't be here. We like what we're doing. We help people. We help people who really need us. And we're out there anytime they need us. We do not only this job, but a lot of different other jobs like COVID assignments and everything else. Our counterparts there, the GFD, they deserve the same thing we do. All law enforcement, they deserve the same thing we do. So we hope that you'll look at the bill, get the funding, and get everything started so that they can make a decision one way or another. But I appreciate you giving me your time, and have a nice day, Senators. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Let me see, I'm just trying to figure out, trying to get myself just a little bit organized, just to advise the panel. Number one, we have several testimony in support of the bill. I'll begin with first, the governor is in support of the bill. She sent a letter of support for this bill to find out what could be available for peace officer, for law enforcement. I believe that when we start talking about public safety, it should be basically everybody that's caught in the post, correct? And then, so there's balance, right? And we have received testimony from, and I'm gonna read out their name, but not read their testimony, because some of them are longer than even you guys' testimony. We've got from Eugene Charfus, Sergeant with CID GPD. We have one here from Rennie Balbin, Senior Probation Officer with the court. I have written testimony from Amy Cruz, Guam Customs and Quarantine Officer. We've got a written testimony from Sean Kim, PO1, Special Investigation Section GPD. Chris Anthony Dangan. I think Dangan, right? I pronounced it correct? I didn't want to murder his name. He's a police officer. Police sergeant with GPD. And I know there's more. But number one, I'll start off with number one. The author of the bill, we both have similar background. Well, former police officer. I was with the 19th cycle, so I understand where you guys are coming from, because back then it was called Department of Public Safety. It was both police and fire as one when I was there. I do agree and I do support the intent for a study so we can find out what's out there and what's available. The only thing I'm going to be asking is that we may take a look at this and ask the retirement fund, because they did send testimony and they're neutral. You want to study, they'll do the study. I just want to make sure, and I'll communicate with them and find out before I push this to the floor, do we need to change the amount of money that's needed? Is $75,000 sufficient to do study? If they say it is, then we move as fast as we can to get this going so they can do the study. But they did ask for several questions. Specifically, Clarification as whether the fund is being requested to provide a study that reviews enhancement to current retirement plans. Then it continues on, or completely new retirement plans. If the intent is the latter, which is a new retirement plan, what specific type of retirement plan? Is the legislature contemplating providing for the identified police officers? You folks? I want to say peace officers should say, I don't know if peace officers proper, because in the peace officer definition includes even mayors and other folks. I would ask that it be specific to post. If you're not running around taking all these requirements to stay in business, you shouldn't be part of this package. That's just me. I may be favoring post officers, but that's okay. And then it asks, if it is the former, which current retirement plans and what types of enhanced benefits are being contemplated? I'd like to see all of it. Take a look at all that may be available, and then we take a look at it and see what can be offered to all the folks on the post. Confirmation that all costs associated with identified enhanced benefits are to be borne strictly by the peace officer / employee, by the government, or both. We'll take a look at it, and whatever the cost will be, then we measure how it can be in place, okay? Clarification on whether the total appropriation of $75,000 includes the potential cost of permitting additional GovGuam defined contribution members to elect to transfer to the defined benefit 1.7 plan, or if such appropriation is limited to just the study to be conducted. My opinion, and I'll find out from the author later, is that let's stick with what we started with. It's about the post, folks. Let's pursue that, and if legal comes up and says that everybody else can participate, then let's measure first. Number one, are they taking the test that you guys require to test? Are they doing what you guys are doing? And the answer is probably no, then they shouldn't be part of it. I'm just going to be biased on that. And the reason why, because you don't see anybody else that's a normal or a regular GovGuam employee responding to when they call for, they need an ambulance, they need a fire truck, they need a police officer, they need somebody from customs. They don't. It's not everybody. And it should be specific to post folks. And I'll move from there. And I'll ask now the author of the bill if he wants to ask any questions of the panel, because we do have some folks outside. They're kind of hesitant. I don't know. Maybe they may want to come in and speak, and if they want to testify, so be it. But we'll go down the line with the colleagues that are present and ask you folks questions and comments, and then we'll move from there. All right? Senator Terlaje.
Mr. Chair, I have to agree that the only people that would be required to get this benefit would be people that are certified under post. None other. And Mr. Chair, I'm not contemplating on going to any specific type of benefit, like the defined benefit plan, defined contribution plan, or the defined benefit 147 plan. I'm asking for the retirement to do an analysis on finding out what kind of plan that can really benefit law enforcement. That's all that I'm asking for. I'm not contemplating on choosing any of the plan that is existing right now. If they can find something else that we can enhance the retirement, at least the retirement age of our law enforcement officer, and then we will sit down and discuss the benefits for one, the advantages, and the disadvantages. Mr. Chair, I want to say that I'm not contemplating on choosing any specific plan right now. But for retirement, to do a research on what type of retirement plan that is suitable for the law enforcement agencies or those people that are certified under post. That's all that I'm asking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Senator Amanda, do you have any questions or comments for the panel?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the panel for being here today. I don't have any questions, but I do agree certainly with you, Mr. Chair. The comments that you made regarding the retirement funds testimony today and how we can strengthen this bill, clarify this bill to ensure that it is inclusive of all existing retirement plans, but that this bill also helps us to look forward at the future of law enforcement so that we can ensure we are providing for the needs of all our law enforcement officers. And the recommendation that you're giving that those who this bill applies to is for those who are post-certified, I think is a good suggestion that we can work with the retirement fund to make clear in this bill. So Sejus Masi, sir, and Sejus Masi to the sponsor.
Thank you, Senator Amanda. Senator Tello, do you have any comments or questions for the panel?
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to come out and testify. I appreciate it. And most especially, I appreciate all the hard work that you did during COVID, the pandemic, and even before that, all the sacrifices that you made in your life, to protect your community. So thank you so much. I do have some questions. I was hoping that we'd have some people from the administration to be here to testify to, especially retirement. They did submit their testimony, but I think it's important that you realize what they wrote. I don't know if you had an opportunity to read the testimony from the retirement agency. It's really important that you read it. I did some study when this bill first came out. It reminded me of another bill that Senator Agustin, the Oversight Chair, introduced in the 35th. I think it was Bill 148. It's not exactly the same, as far as funding, but it's similar. It talks about how police officers are able to, or uniformed officers can actually retire 5 years earlier from government employees. Mr. Torres, I know you're the longest individual that's been in your position. Is that true that law enforcement uniformed personnel may retire from the government of Guam 5 years earlier than government employees? Is that? Oh, can you turn it on and just bring it really close to you? Yeah.
I think that may pertain to the old plan. Yeah.
On the old plan?
Right,
Okay.
the original
Once
defined
upon a
benefits
time.
plan.
Okay.
Right.
Well, when I did some research on this, I saw a bill that was called introduced by New Jersey called the Burnout. It's called the Burnout Bill. You guys might be familiar with that. Ray, I know you like to Google a lot, so, and it talks about how New Jersey changed their law recently. Now North Carolina is looking at doing something as well. I don't know what the guidelines they are following, but I know that Los Angeles, California has one of the best retirement pensions for police officers there. And I too want to make sure that we have the opportunity to get to that point. My concern is, of course, if this bill passes, how many people are going to start retiring and then there's nobody on the street right now? That's one of the things that were brought up. Another concern was the fact that this may bring strain on our current retirement plan that would actually require government of Guam employees to shoulder the cost is a big concern. But one of the things that BBMR sent that's very concerning in their testimony, it talks first about what the bill's intent, what it does, but it says the enhanced benefit would allow for retirement at an early age without penalty. The Bureau requested fiscal comments from Guam Retirement Fund. However, comments and/or testimony have not been provided to date. Therefore, the Bureau is unable to determine if the $75,000 appropriation is significant for a study of this type. The Bureau notes that FY21 General Fund appropriation is not a viable source of funding. Per the Consolidated Revenue and Expenditure Report for the month ending March 31st, 2021, the shortfall of $9.6 million is projected for the general fund revenues. Well, this was in March, but things have changed. Should the legislature pass funding, will need to be taken from different general fund appropriations. When I introduce a bill, I want to make sure there's money in the bank and not bring out any false hopes or anything like that, that we have the money in tow and it's there to go. So we're hoping that there might be some, extra funds at the end of the the rainbow here of 2020 2021. But if not, hopefully in the next fiscal year, 2022, might be a more viable source to go after, because then we can foresee, hopefully, we all know the economy is going down, but I just wanted to, bring a reality check in here. And they're twofold. One, the need for burnout, and reading the reports about it. It's amazing the stuff that you do, and the stress, not only to yourself, but to your families too, that it causes. A lot of times we forget about the families that have to endure this. But the other thing I have was, you're looking at, they were talking about post and, bringing other peace officers into this. You're looking at DOC officers, which has a huge burnout rate for DOC officers. Park rangers, customs, these are other areas that we need to be fair and look across the board to all those peace officers. So we don't want to leave anybody behind. I was hoping I'd have Chief of Police here to tell me, the question of how many uniformed personnel may be eligible for retirement in the next 5 to 10 years. But he's not here to answer those questions. Maybe, Mr. Chair, is he outside, the chief?
No,
Okay.
we have other officers and,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, we just move along.
I have a question, Mr. Torre, Officer Torre, sorry. Are you captain, right? Are you a captain?
No, ma'am. But,
Yeah, okay,
Lieutenant,
Lieutenant, okay.
yes.
Lieutenant Torre, is there ever a time when a police officer retires and then works for the government again in another kind of capacity and be able to double dip?
That would be the, I forget the actual term, but we have had at least a couple officers return to duty after retiring. And so they can, in that instance, they can receive both sources of income via the retirement and the augmentation.
Okay.
I forget the actual term for that, but it's allotted.
I
It
see.
was allotted in
So they
the
can't
budget.
do that, yeah. I'm curious to
Right.
see what those numbers are,
Very few, ma'am. Very few would do that because they come back as to occupy a police officer 1 or I think up to a police officer 2 position. And some of those folks retire at a higher rank. So it's not as attractive to come back in a lower capacity rank
Uh-huh,
as they previously held before retirement.
I see.
But some have taken on the challenge.
Okay. Ray, you said you're retiring soon. You've been in as a police officer for 20-some, okay,
Hello? 24 years, ma'am.
24 years.
With my sick leave and everything else, in a couple of years, I'll be 62. So I can retire then. It's just, I'm trying to decide now if I can retire, if it's beneficial to me, or if I wait another 5, 6, 7 more years. Maybe you guys will find something for us, and I can retire then. I love the police department. I've been doing my job good, but we'll see. We'll see in the next few years what happens.
You don't even look 62, shame on you to even.
Couple years, ma'am.
Because you look like you go another 20 years, Ray, the way you look and you're fit, so. But again, I appreciate all that you do, and I want you to know that I have been looking into this when this bill first came out, and it might not, hopefully the funding's there, but if it's not, I'd like to also include the other peace officers other than police and fire, especially DOC, talk about burnout. But again, appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just for the panel's concern, the report came out in March that there might not be money. There's money to pay for this program, this study, okay? So rest assured, there is funds to pay the 75 grand. I know that for a fact. That's my office. Senator Brown, do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I think I've been around long enough because I've seen the cycle with regards to the retirement fund. When I started in the government almost 33 years ago, You know, I understand the challenges that you're saying. Obviously, I've not served in your capacity, but there's no doubt it takes a special drive to want to serve in the capacities that you are because of the challenges that you encounter in the course of your work. And I think it's how do we find that balance? Because we certainly want to make sure at the end of the day that the people of Guam that pay for all this government we want to give them can afford it, and that they're also getting the service that they need. And certainly in this day and age, as you know, with a lot of the criminal problems we have on this island, including the major drug problem we have, I'm sure at the top of the list of most of our people is just their personal safety. Probably more than anything else right now, their personal safety. And so the challenge is there because it's easy. I often say it's easy to be Santa Claus and want to just give everything and no problem, we got you covered and we're going to raise it. But that's one of the main reasons, and you know, the chairman knows because I worked with his dad here in the legislature when the move was made to change the retirement for the government of Guam. And primarily it was because the government of Guam and the people of Guam could not afford the old retirement system. Even though I myself, I'm a recipient of it. I was there early enough towards the end to actually be a part of the old defined contribution plan. All the other government agencies and employees that have come since then obviously are seeing that it's not as beneficial a plan and it's a longer term that you have to serve, and then it's also dependent on what you contribute to what you get back. The old system was very simple. Your three highest salaries determine what your retirement amount would be. And so I recognize that, and I think that's something that we need to look at as long-term, what can be afforded, and what can we give our people. I understand, a comment is made often that, well, yes, particularly in law enforcement, there are many other job opportunities available elsewhere, even on Guam, you know, working for the federal law enforcement, working in certain other agencies where you have less stress and higher income, which I think, you know, makes a lot of sense for most people. That's what we would like to see. But then it's also a question to what degree can our people afford? What can we afford? And right now there's a lot of money flowing and there's a lot of interest here at appropriating left and right, a lot of long-term commitments being made to take money off the table for long-term construction that takes money off the table immediately for debt service every year, which means there's less money flowing to address other needs in the community. So I mentioned that, and I concur with Senator Tello, just to be a word of caution. I have no objections to the study. I think we need to do and get an idea if there's other options out there that are available. I'm sure they are. I think it's going to come down to what can the people of Guam afford. And then the other thing that I see just in the few months being back in the legislature has to deal with the training that the people of Guam invest in anyone. That if we are investing in the training, should there be a certain payback period to the people of Guam for that opportunity and that training? Because right now it's almost dispensable. You know, we got the training, we got what we need, we're going to leave. Or we're going to go pursue, you know, another field or law enforcement in another area. And for me, I think in all fairness, if we do make that kind of investment, I think that's something that people of Guam should expect a certain time of service back in return for that investment, because they're making the investment. I don't see the government of Guam or the Guam Police Department intending just to train people for them to leave. And certainly for the two of you that are here from GPD, you've obviously not just, you know, made that investment, you've made the commitment all the years that you are here serving our people. In all fairness, I think that's something we seriously need to look at. We need to protect our investment, because it is an investment made by the people of Guam with regards to the training that you know, are pursued and invested in our officers that are working for the Guam Police Department. And at the other end, if there is a viable retirement plan that can benefit, again, keep in mind, what you pay into it is what you get out of it. Probably for those of you at the tail end of your career are probably not going to be in a position to benefit, but it's something certainly future officers or current younger officers may have the opportunity. But again, I think we need to caution. I mean, it's wonderful to say, oh yeah, I got it, got you covered. But as you mentioned, there's so many bills introduced, and then where does it end up? And I'm open to looking at that. If it's something that our community can afford, and we realize it's a major investment that we're making, but it's also a long-term investment, I think that's something that we can look at. Because you're right, under the old plan, Guam police officers didn't have to work as long. It was actually a benefit. You got an early retirement plan so that you weren't, you know, doing 35, 40 years. You had 25, you could be able to retire. And then, you know, most of them have, at that age, still in their early 40s, have a viable opportunity to go out and start another career as well before they fully retire. So I just put that word of caution because I was here the last time we did this round, when we had to deal with the realities that Gov Guam, with all its generosity, could not afford it. And then we're in a position of one group gives, the other group has to come back and take away because the government simply couldn't afford it. And keep in mind, that was a time when we were also having to deal with decreased revenue. We were having to put in place early retirement so that we could keep the government afloat, so that we didn't have to essentially let go of the younger up and coming. We would have, if we didn't do that, we felt very much we'd have to let go of the newer employees coming in, the younger ones, the young family members coming in that would not be able to stay. And we thought a viable option was to do early retirement so that those that were closer to the end of their careers could retire early without penalty. Most of them on higher salaries that they were receiving, and offset that with a new up and coming so that we could give the younger people who didn't have the comfort of a retirement an opportunity. So I just put that word of caution, because like I said, I've been around long enough. I've been around long enough to see the changes that were made, and there are specific reasons as to why. And I know the chairman knows also, his dad was such an advocate for the retirement fund. We can't keep taking out of the retirement fund, even though during that early retirement was a big hit to the retirement fund. I think for those of us that are on it, those of us that will be on it, you want to make sure that it's viable, that it's going to be around for the long haul, especially at a time when we, our ages, we're up in the years and we are no longer able to work or earn other sources of income. So I certainly will support this bill. I have no problem with supporting it. But again, I think we need to look at the numbers, and it does bring up to issue the investment that our people make initially with regards to training we provide to our officers. Do we require certain service time to be returned back to the people? And then what can we look at that we can afford? And then, is it something also, would law enforcement officers be willing to also make a bigger contribution in? Because is it something, I don't know if it's something do we just ask the people of Guam to carry that burden, or how do we address that with regards to our retirement fund contributions? So with that, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions. I think all our panelists pretty much have been able to relay their thoughts and sentiments with regards to this bill, and I thank you for the opportunity to be able to comment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Brown, and I thank the panel for being here today. We have 3 firemen and 1 police officer to come inside and testify, so thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Appreciate your support for the bill. And we'll take a few-minute recess so they can sanitize your area. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Senators.
Thank you, LT, Primo, Mr. Flores, Mr.
Thank you very
Chiquina.
much. Thank you.
All right, we've returned from recess. The area's been sanitized. We're going to start with Steve. We're going to start with you, Steve, and then the chief will be next, and then this time around, the police department outnumbers the fire department, but that's okay. They're in the same force anyway. Sir, we'll start with you.
Half a day. My name is Lieutenant Stephen Amagan from the Guam Police Department. Just want to say I want to thank all of you for giving me this opportunity, even though it's quite a last minute for me. I don't have a prepared speech. I'm going to just probably think out of my coconut head, see what I'm going to say. So actually support this bill. But before anything else, I just want to say it's about time. I have been asking for this opportunity for our law enforcement officers, especially the premier law enforcement agency of Guam, the Guam Police Department, to be given this opportunity to actually receive some form of the same type of retirement that our colleagues back in the States are actually getting. 2000, I have asked one senator, two senators. I asked them twice. First thing they told me, Steve, there's no money. I said, okay, I understand. And then the last time that I asked was during one of our Police Week event down in Agana. I asked one senator. Luckily, he's not serving now. They're not serving now, this body. I said, Senator, is there no way that you can help us out to give us a retirement system that will be able to allow our police officers to retire early? To the mere fact that we spend a lot of hours, times, pretty much we double our time towards, in the performance of our duty. Our guys, the law enforcement side, especially the premier law enforcement agency of Guam, which is the Guam Police Department, spend a lot of time on call, out on patrol. If they're short, they come in on duty and spend a lot of times away from their family actually doing work. And I've seen a lot of our guys really get burned out on just working, trying to protect this island, and we've been continuing to protect this island. So there was one senator that actually answered me and looked at me and then turned around and said, hey, Steve, you asked me this twice. And he told me, Steve, why don't you do research? And I looked at him and said, sir, I'm always polite. Sir, with all due respect, this is why we elected you into office, to do research yourself, introduce bill to benefit our men and women in blue. After that, I never voted for that guy, for that senator. Two of those senators I never voted for, just for the mere fact that they didn't want to support me and they didn't want to support my fellow law enforcement personnel, people that's behind me right now at the hallway that pretty much in support of this bill. But they didn't have, I guess they're not prepared. I'm not prepared myself, but this is just an opportunity that I want to take advantage of, because that was since 2000. Man, if my math is correct, how many years is that? So I just want to say thank you, and hopefully I know this bill will only allow the Guam Retirement Fund to do research, and the funding is coming from the general fund. And I'm quite sure that you guys, this body will be able to find the right amount of money, be able to actually lock in that amount to conduct the research, to help our personnel. And I know this is to enhance the 1.75, if I'm not mistaken, the retirement system. And if hoping that $75,000 will expedite the process of trying to find the right retirement system for our personnel that will be able to allow them to retire at a certain age, probably not all the way to 62. Imagine retiring at the age 62, and this body implemented the PFQT, who's gonna keep doing the PFQT at the age of 62, right? And I'm just glad also that the Post Commission has changed the policy of trying to copy the United States Air Force physical fitness standards. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen, the military has changed their requirements for PFQT. So with this, I just say probably minimum 30 years or 25 years, whatever. I know it's going to take a whole lot of investment on our personnel and also in the government as far as contribution. I'm not sure as far as the matching contribution of the government. I know right now the government's putting in about 26.96% into the retirement, because I see that when some of the guys decide to retire, when they cash out their annual leave, there's a certain percentage that we actually pay into, added to their annual leave, which is about, I believe, 26.97%. So I'm not sure if that's going to affect during the study. It's probably, I know it's going to cost some money, but nothing more gratifying to knowing that our public servants, the public service personnel, our men and women in blue, the men and women of the premier Guam law enforcement agency of Guam, which is the Guam Police Department, will be able to probably retire at the age of 25 or 30. But it's going to cost some money. I know it will cost some money. It's going to take a lot of sacrifice for both sides, the government and our personnel, to do the investment. And the return of investment will be in an early retirement, and hopefully they'll be able to spend more time with their family after being away from their family, serving this island, protecting this island to the best of their ability, and actually risking their lives on protecting this island. And I think that's all I have to say, and just want to say thank you. Again, thank you. This is a step forward of taking care of our public safety personnel. And every time I testify in this body, I always try to throw in good retirement system and a long-awaiting Guam Police Department headquarters. And hopefully, since you guys, this body is already in the swing of things of trying to help us out, probably we can think about finding some ways how to build a headquarters for the Guam Police Department. And that will really make our men and women in blue really happy. It will motivate them to be in one area. And at the same time, it will minimize the cost of this government instead of leasing buildings from different places, scattered in all places. If GDOA can do it, I think Guam Police Department can do it with the right person, with the right idea from this body. I think you guys will be able to help us out with the Guam Police Department headquarters, and the best, probably not better than the old retirement plan, but probably second best to the old retirement plan, so that our guys will actually decide, say, you know what, this is my island, I'm willing to serve it, they're taking care of me, I will stay here until I retire. I guess that concludes my testimony.
Thank you,
Sorry,
sir.
I wasn't prepared.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Chief, you're on.
Having good afternoon. I'm Stephen C. Camacho, the Chief of Police at the Guam Police Department. I would like to thank all the senators for allowing us to be here today and allowing me to provide some oral testimony, which again will be followed up by written testimony from my office. I am here to stand in support of Bill 137-36, which intends to conduct a study on the feasibility of public safety personnel into the DB 1.75 retirement system. I believe what the measure of this intent is very well meaningful. And if you've walked into the gallery outside in the lobby, you see a lot of police officers are out there because they all stand in support especially those that fall into the DC, or what we refer to as the 401k plan. As I read through this bill, it says that officers have an average of 6 years less than their counterparts. So if you took the current retirement plan, which most people say that you have to work until the age of 62, and you take away the 6 years that most these law enforcement or public safety their counterparts, that brings you about to the age of 56, which is almost similar to what you see with our counterparts in the federal law enforcement. So it's my understanding, and I'm not a retirement expert, and I've never served in the federal law enforcement capacity, but it's my understanding that there is an age where there's a cutoff to join a federal law enforcement agency like FBI, DEA, ATF. And that age cutoff is usually 37. The reason why that age is cut off at 37 is because you can only work up to the age of 57 in the federal law enforcement agencies. And so if we look at the language in this bill, it kind of almost mirrors that age where you would retire at 56 or 57. One of the other things that's mentioned here in page 2 is recruitment efforts. And I'll tell you, as the chief, I've actually read a resignation letter from one of my young officers. He was in less than 1 year. And he put it simply in his letter, Chief, I'm leaving you to another agency on island. He actually left to the Navy Police because they offer me a better pay, but they offer me better retirement package, and they're offering me better benefits. And some of those benefits that this young officer was going to avail to is things like access to the Navy Exchange. It's my understanding that Navy police also have access to commissary without having to be in the military, have that military ID card. So, they're leaving the Guam Police Department. I lost at least 6 that I can count off the top of my head to the Navy police. I was talking to another fellow director who says he lost at least 11 or 12 to the Navy. So we've got to, just like this bill is intentioned, we got to provide an environment where people want to come and join the Guam Police Department or the Guam Fire Department or any public safety agency, but they understand that there are some benefits to it. There's something that they have to look forward to, because as many of the other people that have testified before me have stated, public safety is not an agency where you want to work until the age of 62. We talked before the restart of this hearing as senators. You talked about my experience with dealing with that young girl, that I dealt with. That takes its toll on the members of the public safety team. We have seen dead bodies, suicides, homicides, traffic fatalities, and those things, believe it or not, take a toll. Before I jumped into my car to get down here, I heard Senator Terlaje. We talked about a burnout plan for some police department. The fact that public safety officers or officials, those working the public safety field, experience burnout than other government counterparts and other jobs is a reality. It's such a reality that the Department of Justice has now offered law enforcement mental health and wellness grants to help our officers deal with the mental stressors that occur in their jobs. And this effect on the mental health of the public safety officials, these officers, is very real. So real that they're offering federal grants so that we can create peer support programs, crisis intervention programs, to help our officers deal with the stress that they deal with as they execute their daily duties. A couple years ago, back in 2019, when I first came in as chief, there was a couple of stories that came out of New York Police Department where their officers were so stressed that they were committing suicide. They called it, I think it was called the blue suicide. And it was something that we started to look into because I was getting concerned that, I did not want this to carry over into our police department, and we wanted to get in front of it so that we can provide mental health assistance to our employees. That's another thing that I've seen as the chief, is that the current plan, the 401k or the DC plan, doesn't allow for retirement. And I don't think across the board, the retirement fund has ever allowed for retirement for PTSD-related illnesses or incidences. And unfortunately, that has created, an issue for myself as a chief, because there's a case that has been dragging on with an employee for almost 20 years, unresolved case, and we're at a point where we're not sure what the options are anymore, because the employee is deemed unfit to return to duty. But then there are other cases where I've had employees that have been on disability for prior to my assuming as chief of police. So these retirement plans that we have don't offer, again, that safety net where if you're unable to perform the duty anymore because of medical illness or other types of illness, there is no safety net. They just have to stay on, I believe it's called disability, but they're not retired. They're still in the government system. So I support something, a study. I think the $75,000 is a drop in the bucket for something that will really benefit our law enforcement officers and our public safety counterparts, so that we can get them to retire at an earlier age without being penalized, because we do deal with a lot of stress, and we work in an environment that's very different from other government employees. So this will be followed by written testimony, but I thank you, and I thank Senator Pedo and the sponsors of this bill, and the senators today for allowing me the chance to speak on behalf of the Guam, men and women of the Guam Police Department, many of whom support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Sir.
For the Senator San Agustin, Senator Pedo, Senator Juan Brown, Senator Taitagui, I thank you for this opportunity to speak before you in support of this bill. I remember...
Your name, sir? Inanmu?
Art San Nicolas. I remember a few months last year, we had a virtual hearing regarding this matter, some type of bill to be introduced to have the law enforcement personnel retire early due to medical illnesses, stress from the job, or what have you, And my honest opinion at that time, I even mentioned, why have the study? The power is in your hands. You have people working for you to conduct that study in your office, who sometimes spend too much money conducting studies. Over $500 or $500,000, $300,000 there, here and there, paying people to do our own studies from the outer islands or from the mainland coming to Guam. Well, we have our own bright people on this island to do it, Maybe even in your office, you got your analyst or what have you to do research, This is something that law enforcement on Guam really needs. I'm a firefighter. My brother was a police officer in the 70s. My father was a police officer, if I'm not mistaken, in the 60s. So I'm in full support of this bill. There's other examples of retirement plans in the mainland. We brought up about Senator San Agustin, about one of the mainland, Washington State, where the retirement is 2% per year, right? When they retire, they get 2%. So if you have 20 years of service times 2, you get 40% in your retirement. So are you satisfied? The decision is placed on the employee, the police officer, the firefighter, DOC guard. And this is law enforcement. I'm not undermining any other government of Guam agencies, because they do have retirement plan for educators. They do have retirement plan for health workers. See, but law enforcement is separate in itself. So Washington's retirement plan for law enforcement really is 2% times the number of years of service, 20 years, if they so desire to retire at 20 years. So are you satisfied with 40%? And they take 9% from you every payday that goes into the retirement fund. Yeah, prior to that, in the 80s, it was 7%. It went up in the late 80s to 8%, then 9% in the early 90s. So you decide at what years of service you want to retire from law enforcement. 20, 25, 30, 35 years of service, or 33 years of service. And I understand there probably should be a cap. But you mentioned, Ms. Brown, back then, the old plan. If you ask me, let's all go back to the old plan and have a revolving door with the old plan, right? I mean, top 3, who wouldn't like that? Top 3 of your annual salary and get a percentage out of that based on the number of years of service, 30 years, 70%. See? But 30 years in the Washington retirement plan will bring you to, what, 60% of the top, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's the last 5 years that you work. They look at that and they come to an average of what's your 60%. So it's something that we need to do now. The chief mentioned about responding to suicides, the number of suicides rate, they climbed up. I'll tell you what, firefighters respond to suicides, to hangings, to shootings, just like police officers. Because we're all in the same situation. Okay? We respond to the same scene when those types of scenes take place or happen. PTSD, I'll tell you what, if you look at NIOSH, the National Institute of Occupational Health and Safety, PTSD is one of the greater risks now to law enforcement, to firefighters. Post-traumatic stress syndrome is one of the highest now. Why? Because of what we have to deal with on a daily basis. People complain. Hey, we hear all kinds of complaints about police officers and firefighters. All kinds of complaints. But when we put on our uniform and we report to work, we do our job professionally. We respond. And I'll tell you what, people don't think. That if we don't respond, that means the community is safe. But when we respond, because it's something is happening out there in the community. So there's a burden always placed on us when we respond. What are the effects, health effects of firefighters, really? Cancer, respiratory illnesses, PTSD, mental health, and so on and so forth. Hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C. Because we not only respond to patients, we treat those patients. So we have to deal with this on a daily basis. Just like police officers, when they respond to an assault, to a beating, and they get blood on their hands from the individual that was beaten up or what have you, they can contract the same thing. So now we need to do something with the retirement system. It's got to be fixed. And if you ask me, Senator Brown, let's go back to the old plan and have a revolving door. Sometimes we got to, and at the same time, we got to fix the inequitability in this. Because on the plan, the hybrid plan, you cannot claim the sick leave till you retire, till you meet the retirement qualifications at age 62. Then you cannot add your sick leave on if you're planning to retire early, because they'll penalize you. Well, in the old system, you can add your sick leave and make it accumulate, and you can retire out from there. From that number of years of service, once you tally it. Well, this hybrid system, you cannot. You cannot add it to make it a part of your retirement. You have to meet the qualification first, then you can add it after. I don't know how that works, But something's got to be done for law enforcement personnel here in the island. I'm not undermining other government or Guam agencies. Because there's a retirement system out there, like I said, for educators, for health officials, for other government agencies. But law enforcement itself is very unique. You know, Ms. Taitagui, Senator Taitagui, you mentioned, what if something like this passes and you're afraid that everyone is going to start retiring or retire all of a sudden? I'll tell you what, how we can fix that immediately. Make sure that every year there's a recruitment opening for firefighters and police officers. And let's not wait every 3, 5, 6 years to have one. Because I'll tell you what, the number of firefighters and police officers with the number of years of service they have now, and they're looking forward to retirement, and I know a lot of them don't want to retire. I, for one, want to retire. In August, I'll have 30 years of service in the Guam Fire Department. In August, I have 30 years of service. But in order for the government to fix this issue, make sure the hiring process is continuous. If it has to be every year, every 2 years, let's do it. And yes, if I was sitting in your position, I'll be afraid if a bill like this passes and all of a sudden everyone retires. I will be afraid if I was a senator, but we gotta fix it. We gotta fix that problem. We're short, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. The government of Guam, law enforcement, police officers, firefighters, DOC, we need personnel. We are very short in the department. They're probably afraid to say this, but I'm not. We are short in the Guam Fire Department as we speak. We need to get recruits in there and start the training program immediately. Immediately. Something's got to be done. We've got to start the program now so we won't be affected later on in the future. Because I'll tell you what, you're going to have mass exodus in this department if a retirement bill, because I'm in favor of this bill, takes place. You know, we got to, I'm all for the retirement, Mr. Speaker. I'm all for it. You know me. You know, I always said this to you once before. What happens here? And then tomorrow, kung ang mamanodzo na gini na kung magpatalo, is it going to end when we're done? Or we're not going to look at it anymore? Because I'll tell you what, there's firefighters and police officers that fall under the 401k plan. And it's not right that they have that retirement system. It's not right because what is it in for them? And I don't blame police officers or firefighters leaving the department trying to find a better job opportunities off island. I don't blame them if that's the retirement plan I have. I don't blame them. And you mentioned that we invested in you. You're right, Senator Brown. You've invested in every law enforcement personnel. Guam taxpayers, tax dollars was invested in every employee here on the island. But we need to also invest on the retirement system that will live happily and comfortably for the rest of their life with their families. 6 years, 10 years after they're retired, they're going to move on to the next life. And we want to retire and enjoy our life. I don't want to wait 6 years, retire and 6 years later, I'm going to die. I want to enjoy my retirement with my family, my children, my grandchildren. Post. The officer there mentioned the post requirements. I'm 55, going to be 56 years old. And man, do you guys really know how hard it is to put on a turnout gear, SCBA, face mask, boots, and run an obstacle course? I wish I had GPD's obstacle course. I'll do that in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. I wish I had the Air Force obstacle course. Run a mile, do sit-ups and do push-ups. Try out our obstacle course. And I'll tell you what. Either you're going to fail on the first 3 sections of that course, and you will not make it. try out the obstacle course. Because I'll tell you what, that's a very tough obstacle course. Very tough. Try pulling a hose, dragging a hose, lifting up the ladder, an extension ladder all by yourself. Try pulling a sled, a 180-pound sled in full gear. Because I'll tell you what, half of you guys, or more than half, 3/4, maybe 90%, 80% of you guys won't do it. Won't pass it. But we try our best in the Guam Fire Department. I'll tell you what, Senator, at age 55, I did pass the test. But I'll tell you what, I went through the past year, 2 years, past 2 years of my life. I'm one guy that's sitting here before you that tried dying twice. Okay? So they had to do a cardio vert on me twice. 2019 Easter Vigil, and 2019 New Year's Eve. And I went off island. One of the biggest things that I asked my doctor in Florida is that, am I able to return back to work? And he practically laughed in my face and, oh yeah, you're returning back to work. So I went to the right hospital that performed over 700 procedures a year, the type of cardiac work that I needed in Florida. So yeah, I'm living proof. And I've been there, we're all in there for sometimes for the long term, because we enjoy our job. We enjoy a job. But there's got to be a very practical retirement for law enforcement out there, enforcement personnel, so that they can enjoy the remainder of their lives. So thank you, Senator, for your opportunity. And you know, this few minutes of my testimony, it's nothing compared to how it's going to affect the firefighters for the remainder of their life if nothing is passed. Thank you. So this is Mossy.
All right, thank you. So you're in support of the bill, correct? That's
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Senator Terlaje, do you have any questions for the panel or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank the panel for allowing us to share our thoughts together, and maybe we can go forward with this bill. And I only ask my colleague to please consider this bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Terlaje. Do you have any comments for the panel or
Thank you.
questions?
I'll try and make this short. I know that we have another public hearing next, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to ask the chief how many uniformed personnel may be eligible for retirement in the next 5 years or 10 years, if this bill were to pass.
So I think most of those that are eligible to retire in the next 5 to 10 years will probably be on the what's called, I guess we commonly refer to as the old plan, and that's mostly quite a few of our upper command staff. So captains, lieutenants, majors, maybe a couple of sergeant twos. But I think most of our sergeant ones on down, by the time they came in, they're falling into the 401k plan. And maybe even some of them may have even transferred over to the DB 1.75. So I can definitely get a count, and I can forward that. Yeah, I figured some of the questions that I may be asked today, but I'm working with my personal office is who are on the old plan, who are on the 401k plan, and who are on the DB 1.75. And I can definitely compile that information, and I'll submit it as part of my written testimony.
That would be very helpful too. You know, it's important as well, you know, I don't know if you have the retirement funds testimony as well, and the inclusion that they have here, it's clarification whether the total appropriation of $75,000 includes the potential cost of permitting additional government of Guam defined contribution members to elect to transfer the defined benefits 175 plan, or if such appropriation is limited to such study to be conducted, as well as to confirm that all costs associated with identified enhanced benefits are to be borne strictly by the peace officer / employee by the government in Guam or by both. There's so many perspectives in here. I think that we're not sure on the funding amount on 75. I mean, we got a testimony from the governor saying that she supports it. You know, we don't always get letters from the governor saying she supports it. Well, she also has that transfer authority too. If there's needing any more money other than 75,000, she has the ability to transfer money in that area. But my biggest point, my last thing is that, you know, the study, it's important, it's needed to be done. But my biggest part is that once it's done, can we afford it? And that's when we really need to put our, you know, feet to the grind, you know, and our heads down and figure out how we're going to fund this. It's one thing to do a study, but do you follow through with it, you know? And right now, this morning, we had a public hearing on you know, fixing DOC's building, which is going to cost $200 million. I know 75 is not a whole lot, but how much is it going to cost after? And the last one, I'm sorry, I said the last thing I wanted to put, but
Let's stick to the bill, Senator Taglia.
Yeah.
Thank you.
the last thing I want to put is other proposals, if any, should be considered to help improve the work environment of uniformed personnel. You know, aggressive recruitment to reduce overtime and pressures on existing personnel, mandatory paid leave, something equivalent to sabbaticals for something similar to that. What initiatives have you put in place?
I'm not sure
Well,
what we're trying to get at.
You know, recruitment to reduce the hours, you know, the stress. I mean, kind of similar to what, you know, educators have in incentives. What is the police department doing for your agency?
Yeah, so you know, because we're an executive branch line agency, most of what we offer is just in line with what other departments and agencies offer. So, yeah, I do understand what you're trying to say. You know, there's sabbatical leave over at the department, at least at like the university, if they want to go do further advanced studies. I don't know that I've never seen that program in the Guam Police Department. I'm not aware that we have one. Some of the incentives that we do have, you know, are the Doc Sanchez Scholarship Program. I'm a recipient and a proud graduate of the Doc Sanchez Scholarship Program, both for my bachelor's and my master's degree. Some of the other things, of course, is better work hours. And I think we're probably going to see that sometime in the near future. As you're aware, the Guam Police Department and several other law enforcement agencies are currently in discussions with the collective bargaining agreement with GFT. So as we're moving that forward, unfortunately, again, because of the pandemic, those talks have stalled, and we haven't made much progress. But I think that may be also something to consider as we're moving forward in this retirement bill is what effect, if any, would the collective bargaining agreement have, or what say do they have really in any retirement plans. It's my understanding that in some states and jurisdictions, retirement plans for law enforcement are actually based on collective bargaining agreements that exist with the unions and the government. So that may be something else to consider as we move this down the road.
I definitely appreciate all the work that you put into, you know, trying to find the incentives, you know, and appreciate the hard work that you've been doing during COVID as well, Chief, and as well as you, Steve, and Mr. Siniclis, Sijus Masi, for everything you've done to keep us safe. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Brown, do you have any comments or questions for the panel?
I won't belabor it very long, Mr. Chair, just to reiterate the points. I mean, I have no problem supporting the legislation to do the study. But then we'll see what the outcome of it, and can we afford it? I mean, I'm going to be realistic. I'm not going to promise you the sun and moon and then not deliver. You know, you talked about former senators that you encountered, and I mean, I just think you need to be upfront, because we're looking at how can we afford it. There was a reason why the retirement fund was changed. I mean, that's the reality. And if we're going to specify it for law enforcement, is it going to be the nurses and the doctors? Is it going to be the educators, which is our biggest? You know, we just had the public hearing for that budget. That's the biggest bill the people of Guam have. And so how do we balance it? How can we provide the incentive that would make it attractive to keep up and coming young people that would be interested in serving in law enforcement? Because there's obviously a need for it. But I also want to make sure that the investment of the people of Guam, that there's a long-term payout. Because, I wish the old plan was still here for everybody, but we couldn't afford it. That was the reality. And this government still is not meeting all its obligations. Let's find out how much money the retirement fund is underpaid that the government of Guam still owes to keep it viable. That's the long-term thing, because I wouldn't want to end up in a situation, as we've seen in the CNMI, and we've seen it, we've heard it. You make that investment, all of a sudden you're retired, and then you end up finding out that what you thought you invested and what you're going to receive didn't add up. We don't want to be in that situation, because then we're older and we're less capable of doing anything about it. So I think we just need to do it responsibly and also look at the financial aspects. Certainly if it's something that we can address and our government can absorb, I'm sure we'll have to prioritize. It comes down to priority. Right now, I'm hearing that everything's, the money's there, the money's there, the money's there. And I've been around long enough to know the money's not always there. But I certainly will look forward to supporting this bill, and let's see what the outcome of the study is, and we can take it from there. But thank you very much for your time and coming in and providing your input and your testimony. It's most appreciated. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Senator Perez, thank you for joining us. Did you want to comment or make it very simple, because we're gonna close this and go right into the budget of land management?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank everybody who's coming today to provide testimony. And I hear the frustration and the heartache that's coming from the police department. And, I just came from a budget hearing yesterday where there's a mass exodus of law enforcement too as well. And so this is a problem that needs to be addressed, and we're willing to work with my colleagues to come to a solution. I do support the bill. I would like to see perhaps even a task force to make this a reality. So let's do as Masi. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. We will now proceed to conclude this public hearing on Bill 137-36 COR. The committee will continue to receive testimony. Please address your written testimony to the Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing. Submit it via email to Senator Joe S. Agustin@gmail.com or to my office located at Rand Care Building, 2nd floor, Suite 3, 761 Marine Corps Drive, Tamuning, Guam. Since much for your attendance, Chief, and for Mr. Nicholas, Fire Department, and for LT on the side, and all the folks. Thank you for participating in today's hearing. For those at home, thank you for watching. The public hearing on Bill 137-36 COR is now adjourned at 3:35 p.m. We'll take a recess, and then we'll begin with the budget hearing on land management, Department of Land Management. Thank you, Chief.